The Jin dynasty, officially known as the Great Jin, lasted from 1115 to 1234 as one of the last dynasties in Chinese history to predate the Mongol invasion of China. Its name is sometimes written as Qin Jin in English to differentiate it from an earlier Jin dynasty of China whose name is identically spelled using the Latin alphabet. It is also sometimes called the Jurchen dynasty or the Jurchen Jin, because its founding Emperor Taizu of Jin was of Wanyan Jurchen descent. The Jin emerged from Taizu's rebellion against the Liao dynasty, which held sway over northern China until the nascent Jin drove the Liao to the western regions, where they became known as the Western Liao. After vanquishing the Liao, the Jin launched an over 100-year war against the Song dynasty, which was based in southern China. Over the course of the rule, the Jurchens of Jin quickly adapted to Chinese customs, and even fortified the Great Wall against the rising Mongols. Domestically, the Jin oversaw a number of cultural and technological advancements, like the development of gunpowder and the revival of Confucianism. In 1234 Jin succumbed to the Mongol expansion. The Jin dynasty was officially known as the Great Jin at the time. Furthermore, the Jin emperors referred to the state as Zhongguo like some other non-Han dynasties. Non-Han rulers expanded the definition of China to include non-Han peoples in addition to Han people whenever they ruled China. Yuan, Jin, and Northern Wei documents indicate that the usage of China by dynasties to refer to themselves began earlier than previously thought. In the 17th century, the Jurchen chief Ne-Ha-Chi combined the three Jurchen tribes after 30 years of struggle and founded the later Jin dynasty. Ne-Ha-Chi's eighth son and heir, Wang Taiji, later changed the name of his people from Jurchen to Manchu in 1635. The next year, he changed the name of the later Jin to King in 1636. However, the Qing imperial clan, the Azanjoro, are unrelated to the Wanyan clan of the Jin dynasty. History. The Jin dynasty was created in modern Jilin and Heilongjiang by the Jurchen tribal chieftain Aiguda in 1115. According to tradition, Aiguda was a descendant of Hanpu. Aiguda adopted the term for gold as the name of his state, itself a translation of Anshu river, which meant golden in Jurchen. This river, known as Alachuki in Chinese, was a tributary of the Songhua River east of Harbin. The Jurchen's early rival was the Khitan-led Liao dynasty, which had held sway over modern North and Northeast China and Mongolia for several centuries. In 1121, the Jurchens entered into the alliance conducted at sea with the Han Chinese-led Northern Song dynasty and agreed to jointly invade the Liao dynasty. While the Song armies faltered, the Jurchens succeeded in driving the Liao to Central Asia. In 1125, after the death of Aiguda, the Jin dynasty broke its alliance with the Song dynasty and invaded North China. When the Song dynasty reclaimed the southern part of the Liao where Han Chinese lived, they were fiercely resisted by the Han Chinese population who had previously been under Liao rule. While when the Jurchens invaded that area, the Han Chinese did not oppose them at all and handed over the southern capital to them. The Jurchens were supported by the anti-Song, Beijing-based noble Han clans. The Han Chinese who worked for the Liao were viewed as hostile enemies by the Song dynasty. Song Han Chinese also defected to the Jin. On the 9th of January 1127, Jin forces ransacked Bianjing, the capital of the northern Song dynasty, capturing both Emperor Qinzong and his father, Emperor Huizong, who had abdicated in panic in the face of the Jin invasion. Following the fall of Bianjing, the succeeding southern Song dynasty continued to fight the Jin dynasty for over a decade. eventually signing the Treaty of Shaoxing in 1141, which called for the cession of all Song territories north of the Huai River to the Jin dynasty and the execution of Song General Ufei in return for peace. The peace treaty was formally ratified on the 11th of October 1142 when a Jin envoy visited the Song court. The migration south. After taking over northern China, the Jin dynasty became increasingly Sinicized. About 3 million people, half of them Jurchens, migrated south into northern China over 2 decades, and this minority governed about 30 million people. The Jurchens were given land grants and organized into hereditary military units. 300 households formed a Moqi and 7 to 10 Mouks formed a Meng'an. Many married Han Chinese, although the ban on Jurchen nobles marrying Han Chinese was not lifted until 1191. After Emperor Taizong died in 1135, the next 3 Jin emperors were grandsons of Aiguda by 3 different princes. Emperor Suzong studied the classics and wrote Chinese poetry. He adopted Han Chinese cultural traditions, but the Jurchen nobles had the top positions. Later in life, Emperor Suzong became an alcoholic and executed many officials for criticizing him. He also had Jurchen leaders who opposed him murdered, even those in the Wanyan clan. In 1149 he was murdered by a cabal of relatives and nobles, who made his cousin Wanyan Liang the next Jin emperor. Because of the brutality of both his domestic and foreign policy, Wanyan Liang was posthumously demoted from the position of emperor. Consequently, historians have commonly referred to him by the posthumous name Prince of Hailing. Rebellions in the north. Having usurped the throne, Wanyan Liang embarked on the program of legitimizing his rule as an emperor of China. In 1153, he moved the empire's main capital from Huining Prefecture to the former Liao capital, Jianjing. 4 years later, in 1157, to emphasize the permanence of the move, he raised the nobles' residences in Huining Prefecture. Wanyan Liang also reconstructed the former Song capital, Bianjing, which had been sacked in 1127, making it the Jin's southern capital. Wanyan Liang also tried to suppress dissent by killing Jurchen nobles, executing 155 princes. To fulfill his dream of becoming the ruler of all China, Wanyan Liang attacked the southern Song dynasty in 1161. Meanwhile, 2 simultaneous rebellions erupted in Shangjing, at the Jurchen's former power base, led by Wanyan Liang's cousin, soon-to-be crowned Wanyan Yong, and the other of Khatan tribesmen. Wanyan Liang had to withdraw Jin troops from southern China to quell the uprisings. The Jin forces were defeated by Song forces in the Battle of Kaishi and Battle of Tangdao. With a depleted military force, Wanyan Liang failed to make headway in his attempted invasion of the southern Song dynasty. Finally, he was assassinated by his own generals in December 1161, due to his defeats. His son and heir was also assassinated in the capital. Although crowned in October, Wanyan Yong was not officially recognized as emperor until the murder of Wanyan Liang's heir. The Khatan uprising was not suppressed until 1164. The horses were confiscated so that the rebels had to take up farming. Other Khataran and Shi cavalry units had been incorporated into the Jin army. Because these internal uprisings had severely weakened the Jin's capacity to confront the southern Song militarily, the Jin court under Emperor Suzong began negotiating for peace. The Treaty of Longxing was signed in 1164 and ushered in more than 40 years of peace between the two empires. In the early 1180s, Emperor Suzong instituted a restructuring of 200 Meng'an units to remove tax abuses and help Jurchens. Communal farming was encouraged. The Jin Empire prospered and had a large surplus of grain in reserve. Although learned in Chinese classics, Emperor Suzong was also known as a promoter of Jurchen language and culture during his reign. A number of Chinese classics were translated into Jurchen. The Imperial Jurchen Academy was founded, and the imperial examinations started to be offered in the Jurchen language. Emperor Suzong's reign was remembered by the posterity as the time of comparative peace and prosperity, and the emperor himself was compared to the mythological rulers Liao and Shun. Emperor Suzong's grandson, Emperor Zhangzong, venerated Jurchen values, but he also immersed himself in Han Chinese culture and married an ethnic Han Chinese woman. The Taihei Code of Law was promulgated in 1201 and was based mostly on the Tang Code. In 1207, the southern Song dynasty attempted an invasion, but the Jin forces effectively repulsed them. In the peace agreement, the Song dynasty had to pay higher annual indemnities and behead Han Tuozhou, the leader of the hawkish faction in the Song imperial court. Fall of Jin. Starting from the early 13th century, the Jin dynasty began to feel the pressure of Mongols from the north. Genghis Khan first led the Mongols into Western Xia territory in 1205 and ravaged it 4 years later. In 1211, about 50,000 Mongols horsemen invaded the Jin Empire and began absorbing Khitan and Jurchen rebels. The Jin army had 500,000 men with 150,000 cavalry but abandoned the western capital, Datong. The next year the Mongols went north and looted the Jin eastern capital, and in 1213 they besieged the central capital, Zhongdu. In 1214 the Jin made a humiliating treaty but retained the capital. That summer, Emperor Shanzong abandoned the central capital and moved the government to the southern capital, Kaifeng, making it the official seat of the Jin dynasty's power. In 1216, a hawkish faction in the Jin imperial court persuaded Emperor Shanzong to attack the Song dynasty, but in 1219, they were defeated at the same place by the Yangtze River where Wanyan Liang had been defeated in 1161. The Jin dynasty now faced a two-front war that they could not afford. Furthermore, Emperor Aizong won a succession struggle against his brother and then quickly ended the war and went back to the capital. He made peace with the Tanguts of Western Xia, who had been allied with the Mongols. Many Han Chinese and Khitans defected to the Mongols to fight against the Jin dynasty. Two Han Chinese leaders, Shi Tianzi and Lu Haima, and the Khitan Xiao Zala defected and commanded the three Tumans in the Mongol army. Lu Haima and Shi Tianzi served Genghis Khan's successor, Ogedei Khan. Lu Haima and Shi Tianzi led armies against Western Xia for the Mongols. There were 4 Han Tumans and 3 Khitan Tumans, with each Tuman consisting of 10,000 troops. The 3 Khitan generals Shimo Baidia, Taba, and Xiao Zhongxi commanded the 3 Khitan Tumans, and the 4 Han generals Zhang Ru, Zhan Shi, Shi Tianzi and Lu Haima commanded the 4 Han Tumans under Ogedei Khan. Shi Tianzi was a Han Chinese who lived under Jin rule. Inter-ethnic marriage between Han Chinese and Jurchens became common at this time. His father was Shi Bingzhi. Shi Bingzhi married a Jurchen woman and a Han Chinese woman. It is unknown which of them was Shi Tianzi's mother. Shi Tianzi was married to 2 Jurchen women, a Han Chinese woman and a Korean woman, and his son Shigang was born to one of his Jurchen wives. His Jurchen wives' surnames were Monyan and Nahe. His Korean wife's surname was Li, and his Han Chinese wife's surname was Shi. Shi Tianzi defected to the Mongol forces upon their invasion of the Jin dynasty. His son, Shigang, married a Karaite Karaite woman. The Karaites were Mongolified Turkic people and considered as part of the Mongol nation. Shitians, Zhangru, Jianxi and other Han Chinese who served in the Jin dynasty and defected to the Mongols helped build the structure for the administration of the new Mongol state. The Mongols created a Han army out of defected Jin troops, and another army out of defected Song troops called the newly submitted army. Genghis Khan died in 1227 while his armies were attacking Western Xia. His successor, Ogedei Khan, invaded the Jin dynasty again in 1232 with assistance from the southern Song dynasty. The Jurchens tried to resist, but when the Mongols besieged Kaifeng in 1233, Emperor Taizong fled south to the city of Kaizhou. A Song-Mongol allied army looted the capital, and the next year Emperor Taizong committed suicide to avoid being captured when the Mongols besieged Kaizhou, ending the Jin dynasty in 1234. The territory of the Jin dynasty was to be divided between the Mongols and the Song dynasty. However, due to lingering territorial disputes, the Song dynasty and the Mongols eventually went to war with one another over these territories. In Empire of the Steppes, Rene Grousset reports that the Mongols were always amazed at the valor of the Jurchen warriors, who held out until 7 years after the death of Genghis Khan. Military. Contemporary Chinese writers ascribe Jurchen's success in overwhelming the Liao and northern Song dynasties mainly to the cavalry. Already during Egwuda's rebellion against the Liao dynasty, all Jurchen fighters were mounted. It was said that the Jurchen cavalry tactics were a carryover from the hunting skills. Jurchen horsemen were provided with heavy armor. On occasions, they would use a team of horses attached to each other with chains. As the Liao dynasty fell apart and the Song dynasty retreated beyond the Yangtze, the army of the new Jin dynasty absorbed many soldiers who formerly fought for the Liao or Song dynasties. The new Jin Empire adopted many of the Song military's weapons, including various machines for siege warfare and artillery. In fact, the Jin military's use of cannons, grenades, and even rockets to defend besieged Kaifeng against the Mongols in 1233 is considered the first ever battle in human history in which gunpowder was used effectively, even though it failed to prevent the eventual Jin defeat. On the other hand, the Jin military was not particularly good at naval warfare. Both in 1129–30 and in 1161 Jin forces were defeated by the southern Song navies when trying to cross the Yangtze River into the core southern Song territory. Even though from the latter campaign the Jin had equipped a large navy of their own, using Han Chinese shipbuilders and even Han Chinese captains who had defected from the southern Song. In 1130, the Jin army reached Hangzhou and Ningbo in southern China, but heavy Chinese resistance and the geography of the area halted the Jin advance, and they were forced to retreat and withdraw, and they had not been able to escape the Song navy when trying to return until they were directed by a Han Chinese defector who helped them escape. In Zhenjiang, southern China was then cleared of the Jurchen forces. The Jin Great Wall. In order to prevent incursion from the Mongols, a large construction program was launched. The records show that 2 important sections of the Great Wall were completed by the Jurchens. The Great Wall as constructed by the Jurchens differed from the previous dynasties. Known as the border fortress of the boundary ditch of the Jin, it was formed by digging ditches within which lengths of wall were built. In some places subsidiary walls and ditches were added for extra strength. The construction was started in about 1123 and completed by about 1198. The 2 sections attributable to the Jin dynasty are known as the Old Mingchang Walls and New Great Walls, together stretching more than 2,000 kilometers in length. Government. The government of the Jin dynasty merged Jurchen customs with institutions adopted from the Liao and Song dynasties. The pre-dynastic Jurchen government was based on the quasi-egalitarian tribal council. Jurchen society at the time did not have a strong political hierarchy. The Shuofu records that the Jurchen tribes were not ruled by central authority and locally elected the chieftains. Tribal customs were retained after Aguda united the Jurchen tribes and formed the Jin dynasty, coexisting alongside more centralized institutions. The Jin dynasty had 5 capitals, a practice they adopted from the Bali and the Liao. The Jin had to overcome the difficulties of controlling a multicultural empire composed of territories once ruled by the Liao and northern Song. The solution of the early Jin government was to establish separate government structures for different ethnic groups. List of emperors. Too long. Normally not used when referring to this sovereign. Did not exist. Emperor's family tree.